Ooh. Me.
Scene one.
Oh.
Take
Oh,
12.
shit. Woo, okay. Let's go ahead and get into it. The Batman. Let's do a little background work. Let's talk about how we got here. A couple of years ago, we all know that Dawn of Justice came out. Didn't really hit. And at that time, you had Ben Affleck, who was the Batman. Now, the funny thing is, Ben Affleck didn't do a bad job. I really liked him. I thought he was pretty good. He's like top four Batman that have done it. Damn good job. You're shaking your head, but it was great. It was great. He did a good job in his role, and I think Zack Snyder was fitting for that. Snyder's tendencies towards dark, gritty, kind of action-packed films fits Batman, but it didn't quite fit Superman. I think as they were kind of moving forward and they were hoping to just kind of go into a Batman series with Ben Affleck, what ended up happening is I think he kind of lost passion for the character, lost passion for the project, and stepped away from it. And Matt Reeves stepped on in. After that period of time, I think Matt Reeves decided to take the script and just kind of go back to square one, wrote it, taking inspiration from books like Batman Year One, Volume 1 through 3, took inspiration from things like The Long Halloween, um, and he wanted to make a more gritty, realistic detective story with Batman instead of just being an action-packed adventure film as Batman films typically are. I mean, seeing the trailers, seeing the basic idea, seeing the creative talent behind the lens, I was like, okay, let's walk into this. Let's have some kind of stable expectations because DC and Warner Brothers been struggling, but they always run back to Batman when they ain't doing a good job. All that intro aside, how was the film? Flat out, it was good. Okay, let's just get that out of the way so we don't have to pretend that there's some other nuance. It's a good film. Don't say flawless because it definitely has some flaws. And as we get into this little breakdown here, I hope to kind of give you what I believe is my opinion, my well-rounded opinion and approach to what made the film so good and what kind of hung it up a little bit. But overall, I think you should see it. I think it's good. Take your opinion before you take mine or anybody else's. Please check it out. Okay. As we talk about it, we talk about Matt Reeves. When I saw his name, when they set him up to be the director of the film, I'm like, okay, yeah, this guy's legit. He basically caught my attention from the sequel to Rise of the Planet of the Apes. He did Dawn of Planet of the Apes, and that was just a good film. You saw him take characters like Koba, if you've seen the movie, who's a villain, and he made that character very interesting. So he gave the protagonist something to kind of compete against. And then he went on and made Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I'm sorry. He went on to make War of the Planet of the Apes a couple of years later. It was also just a phenomenal film. So Matt Reeves attached. I'm like, hell yeah, let's do this. But the controversy showed up when we heard Rob Pattinson. And what I've learned is when you hear an actor's name, you don't judge it based off of what you think they've done or what they've done already because you don't know how good this actor is or actress is. And Rob Pattinson is a damn good actor. If you've seen films like Good Time, the dude can bring it. And just as funny as it was, when Rob Pattinson name came out, everybody was like, "Oh no, not Sparkles from Twilight! Like I don't want that dude." But the crazy part is we did the same thing with Heath Ledger. When Heath Ledger came out, everybody gave him crap for Knight's Tale, and he proved us wrong. Michael Keaton, same thing. So we don't know what an actor's going to bring, so we have to take that bias and kind of wrap it up. Let the actor show us what they got. And I'm gonna tell you, this dude brought it. He really did. The Bruce Wayne Batman aspect that Matt Reeves writes up and designs for this film, and the character that Rob Pattinson creates is a Bruce Wayne a Batman that been doing this Batman thing for like 1 to 2 years. He's not great at it yet, and he's solely addicted to being Batman. He just wants to be the guy that's trying to make up for pain. He's trying to make up for something that got him hurt, and he wants to go out at night, terrorize people who made him feel terrorized, and that's really his highest goal. That's what you're seeing, and he takes a lot of strong inspiration from. I don't know if you've ever saw the book. It was by Jeff Johns. It's called Batman Year One. Oh no, sorry, not Year One, Earth One. And it's about him just being this ground level dude. He doesn't have all the gadgets yet. He doesn't have it all figured out. So as the story plays out, you kind of see him, Rob Pattinson's Batman, interacting with the world that views him as strange as he is. I mean, this is really weird. And the cool thing about Rob Pattinson's performance, what I really like about what he does is it's gritty. It's a grounded, real world approach. And it's something that to not knock what we get from Christopher Nolan's films, because his Batman is he's also a real down to earth kind of Batman. It's the fact that this version is almost so realistic that it's strange to see Batman. Like it's odd. Like this is a weirdo walking around at night. And a lot of that has to go to Greg Fraser, the cinematographer, who does this really good job of shooting Gotham in a way that feels ground up, as opposed to a lot of cityscapes and you're looking down. It's you feel the texture of the city, if that makes any sense. And I'm really impressed with that. He's done films like Rogue One, and he's done films like Dune, and I just kind of like, this is a guy that knows how to make you feel what you're seeing. And it really benefits Batman because you see Batman in a way that I just haven't really seen Batman movies do it. During the Burton era, you were watching Batman through Burton's eyes. It's goth romanticism. But in this, it's kind of real world, imagine dystopian 1970s New York. I mean, it's really good. And I love what I saw there. The music, Michael Giacchino, this dude, it is a hard task to make a Batman theme, all right? Because Danny Elfman, that guy made the Batman theme song, all right? If you were born in the 70s or beyond, 60s, and you grew up and you saw the Michael Keaton era of Batman, that theme song was the Batman theme song. And it's tough. So for Hans Zimmer to show up in the mid-2000s and make his for the Dark Knight trilogy, you're like, okay, that's tough. But this dude said, you know what? I got it too. And Michael Giacchino, he also had this kind of riveting, deep, rich, heavy, dark-toned thing. And I'm like, okay, I love the way this feels. There's a sequence in the movie, forgive me if you haven't seen it, so spoiler alert, when the Batman is coming out of the darkness of these shadows, which is also a big one to the way it's shot. So Greg Fraser. But the music is also following it because Batman is stepping forward, and it's haunting. I mean, he's scary. And for the movie to provide that type of emotion with a scene without any talking, I love that kind of stuff. And this type of movie provided that. This is a Batman that's legitimately horrifying. And I'm going to take that as a segue into the horror quality of this film, because I am very surprised of what they did with the Riddler. You could feel from the original trailer that Matt Reeves was taking a lot of inspiration from kind of Gen X, kind of that nihilism, dark, grungy feeling. But he also took a lot of inspiration from films like Zodiac and Saw, and I think what other films are like Seven. And so when you get this Riddler character, who I also have to shout out to Jeff Johns from writing the Batman Year One, he is a serial killer who is playing this methodical game, and killing for him is nothing. So when you get that inside of the Batman universe, and we've all been kind of conditioned for ease, even though some of the Batman movies can be dark, the Joker was dark in, the Dark Knight saga, but this Riddler is like a nightmare. It was really, really scary, and hats off to Paul Dano for creating this character. If you've seen films like Prisoners or There Will Be Blood, he's always capable of playing these weaselly, snide, just annoyances, and he's able to take that skill set of his, and he turns out a Riddler that I'm very impressed with. No knock to Jim Carrey, because that was that age, but this guy did a damn good job, and I'm very proud of that. Moving on to the cast, got to give a shout out to Zoe Kravitz, because she's a good actress, and that's the only reason. But she is a good Catwoman, really, really good. She's physical. She's there. She's present in the role. She shows emotion. I really like that. But at the same time, still got to say Michelle Pfeiffer. That's still my Catwoman. She still got it. So ain't knocking. But I'm proud of what Zoe has done, and I want to see more of that. Then the big one, reality is the one that kicks all ass in all this film is Colin Farrell, because this dude disappears into the Penguin, and for them to give him that much time to put on this amount of prosthetics and him to create this New Jersey crime boss, soprano style character, I'm like, this is legit. Like, go ahead, dude. Like, I like seeing that. I like seeing people make a character their own, and he had the room to do that. So I want to see more of this character. More shout outs just kind of around the board. Andy Serkis coming in and doing his version of kind of that, again, that Earth One Alfred, who's more of a Race Bannon bodyguard type of guy instead of the classic butler. Really impressed with his Alfred. Want to see a little bit more from him. And also Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Wright, I feel like he can't do anything wrong. Everything he's in, he elevates it. And he plays this really heart and soulful version of Jim Gordon, who's just a good guy. And I like that. I really love what I appreciate about that. And just kind of rounding out the other cast members, you have John Turturro, who's just a class act all the time. He shows up to play the Roman, Carmine Falcone. It was just great. So great cast, really excited about all those features. And as I get back into kind of the things that benefit this story, it's the performances, it's the music, it's the cinematography, it's this version of a story that's willing to take its time. And time is this, this movie's got a lot of time. It's damn near 3 hours long. So just be prepared for that. But is it perfect? No, it's not. I think time doesn't really benefit it all the time because it's not utilized well. Again, getting kind of spoiler territory. If you don't want to hear any of this, please, opt out. But the film progressively shows you who the Riddler is and what the Riddler's trying to do. And as it's trying to work out this mystery, which is kind of cool because the Riddler's really trying to mature the Batman as a side effect of his plan. Batman wants to just be the guy that goes out and beats up people because he's mad and, he's emo. But the Riddler looks at him as, you're someone who can literally do the things that I can't. You can go out and terrorize the unlawful, be they politicians, be they mobsters. You can do those things. And he's forcing Batman to evolve. So you get to see character growth in Batman, where Batman typically is the stagnant force while everything around him is kind of changing. So he's kind of the straight man while everything else is comedy. So I'm impressed that they were able to do that. So a major thing that you have to be careful of in film and storytelling, in anything that's a visual media where you're telling a story, is show, don't tell. You have to be careful of exposition dumping instead of bringing the audience along and allowing the audience to be a member of the story you're telling by allowing them to progressively understand what's happening with the story. The Batman sometimes can get real heavy on characters going into just these long explanations about what's happening. So that leaves you to kind of go, oh, okay, you're putting it together and you're giving this film maybe the assumption that it's doing something smart, and it's probably not. So I think that's a weakness. It's not something that destroys the film. It's still really good. I just feel like that's something that kind of keeps it from being great. It's also something that maybe maybe a little bit of tighter editing. It feels like this film was probably already like 4 or 5 hours long. So the editing team was already whittling it down to the gems, trying to just get the story more concise while also getting some things that probably feel like studio meddling. And I'll get into that in the end here. I think another thing that probably is a nitpick on my end, it's probably not something that matters to many people, but I feel like we've already done the gritty and realistic Batman thing. Like, I love this movie. I really enjoy it. I'm going to watch it again at least 3 more times in theaters. But it feels like, without causing unfair comparison, we're like a decade into, space trees and raccoons fighting aliens that can snap away the universe. There's all this other weird stuff that's happening in comic book media. And it felt like Warner Brothers was terrified of the failure of Justice League, so much so that they ran back to, well, gritty, realistic Batman kind of did very well for us in the mid-2000s, so we're going to go run back to that. So it feels like more of the same. And that, again, I don't want that to be misconstrued as I don't like it or that's some negative criticism that destroys the value of the film. It's good. It is good. But it feels like this film would have been even better had it come out in 2010, like right after The Dark Knight, or if this film was set right before Batman, right after Batman Begins. But so, I mean, it's a nitpick. It's possibly not fair to even make that comparison, but I feel like at what point are we going to see Robin? You know, at what point are we going to see Batman fight Killer Croc? At what point are we going to see Batman fight Clayface or Man-Bat or something crazy? I would have loved to see that at some point. So that's just a little nitpick that I got. I promised that I'd get into this. And again, spoilers. So just, you know, if you're going to go see it, be careful. But as the story is pulled along and the Riddler ultimately reveals his hand that he's trying to use Batman to be his muscle, where the Riddler's the brain and they're taking down the corruption of Gotham. And that's nice. That is good. I think that's a good story. It gives Batman ethos. It gives Batman character growth. I think something that I have beef with is how the Riddler's plot kind of progressively builds, and it's kind of nonsensical in a way, kind of like maybe he knows who Bruce Wayne and Batman are, and then all of a sudden there's this big explosion scene at the end, and it felt like studio meddling. Like the studio said, yeah, we need a big giant fight scene. You have to tag something on here at the end. And that ending, though as protracted as it is, feels out of place in a way. Though it's still good. It's still exciting because you still get this really cool moment where Batman does realize he has to be more than just beat up people because I'm rich and white and I can do that. And they use Catwoman to point that out. I like that. I think an edit that I would have offered is the film probably should have started on this note. The Riddler making this threat that I have bombs placed in places that you guys will never know about, or they're time sensitive. Well, they're time sensitive and touch sensitive. So y'all may know where these bombs are, but you have to play my little game to deactivate them. And that forces Batman into revealing this mystery about the corruption of the city and corruption of the political figures and who's really running Gotham and all of that. I think that probably would have helped this story feel its time instead of taking its time in ways that it probably shouldn't, but sometimes it did a damn good job. I want to also get into one last little thing that I also feel was just tagged on. And maybe Matt Reeves meant to do this. Maybe this is something that he wanted. But there's a secret character that's revealed late in the film. Again, spoiler territory. And it feels like we know who that character is. We know who the Riddler's talking to in prison. And part of me is excited, but part of me is kind of exhausted. Like, we know this character's got to show up. We all get it. But I don't want to, like, there's a part of me that's going, let's wait. Let's pump the brakes on that guy because he's important, but we're kind of mediate out on him. We've kind of done him a lot recently. So I even though I do appreciate it, I appreciate God, I think it's okay to wait for that one. If I can do a small comparison, kind of like how the Marvel Spider-Man films avoided Norman Osborn, Green Goblin. This is the quintessential Spider-Man character, but they were like, yeah, let's hold off. And they did. And they managed to do it in a unique way. But I would just say that I wouldn't say it's a con, but I feel like in a way there was a small groan on the inside. Even though I recognize that it's cool, I'm like, okay, that's a cool thing to tag in there. But having seen this. So all this being said, I'm gonna come out and say Batman is still a really good film. I really loved it. All things being said, this Batman film goes down as one of the best, and I would say it's probably a little bit lower than The Dark Knight. The way that it's shot, the performances, the music, all of that stuff is so rich, and it feels like a Batman movie, feels like a Batman narrative. It has a problem with length. It has a problem with kind of some exposition issues and kind of nonsensicalness of a little bit of the story, but none of that is to the detriment of the goodness of the movie. I think as this goes on, there are going to be younger people who have never seen the films that this is kind of based on or read the books that it's based on, and they'll feel like this is the greatest Batman movie ever made. And I think if you don't really have a lot of experience with narratives and experience with stories, you can feel like this is just so revolutionary. It really isn't. We've seen this before. It's just that it's all these cool ideas with genre-swapped Batman thrown in. And that's interesting. But I don't want to give it more credit than it probably deserves. As again, I feel like they could have probably gone in a different direction. I'm still going to give this movie on my scale probably like a 4 out of 5, maybe even if I'm really, really nice, 4.5 out of 5. I still really, really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend that you check it out. Being that this is my first time doing this, if you like content and you want more content from me, like, subscribe, hit the little bell thing so it lets you know, come on back, check out what I'm doing. I appreciate y'all sharing a little time with me. I would like to thank my lovely, lovely producer and soon-to-be wife. And yeah, check it out. I'll catch y'all later. Yeah, okay, there was a clicking thing. This is where the credits are. These are credits. And then a lot of these credits probably don't, like that one right there probably doesn't make any sense. And this one right here, this is related to that one, doesn't make any sense. Y'all take it easy.